Have you ever felt overwhelmed by stress, anxiety, or anger? How do you cope with these negative emotions? Do you let them control you, or do you try to control them? If you are looking for a way to achieve more peace of mind and happiness in your life, you might want to learn from the Stoics. Stoicism is an ancient philosophy that teaches how to live a calm, rational, and virtuous life. In this video, we will share 10 lessons from Stoicism that can help you keep calm in any situation. These 10 lessons are based on the teachings of 3 famous Stoic philosophers, Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. They will show you how to deal with challenges, overcome fears, manage emotions, and live according to your values. By the end of this video, you will have a better understanding of what it means to be a Stoic and how to apply these lessons to your own life. So, are you ready to learn how to keep calm like a Stoic? Then stay tuned and watch this video. Lesson 1. Focus on what you can control. One of the most important lessons from Stoicism is to focus on what you can control and let go of what you cannot. This is what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus explained it like this: some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, property, reputation, command, and, in one word, whatever are not our own actions. What does this mean? It means that we should only concern ourselves with our own thoughts, actions, and reactions, which are the only things that we have full power over. Everything else, such as external events, other people, and outcomes, are not up to us, and therefore not worth worrying about. For example, we cannot control the weather, the traffic, the economy, or the opinions of others. We can only control how we respond to them and what we do about them. How can we apply this lesson to our lives? We can start by identifying what is in our control and what is not, and then focus our attention and energy on the former rather than the latter. We can also practice accepting what we cannot change and working on what we can improve. For example, if we have a problem at work, we can focus on finding a solution rather than complaining or blaming others. If we have a health issue, we can focus on following the doctor's advice rather than worrying about the worst-case scenario. If we have a conflict with someone, we can focus on being respectful and honest rather than trying to change their mind or behavior. What are the benefits of this lesson? By focusing on what we can control, we can reduce our stress, anxiety, and frustration, and increase our sense of agency, responsibility, and freedom. We can also become more resilient, adaptable, and confident as we learn to face challenges with calmness and clarity. We can also live more in harmony with our values as we focus on what matters most to us rather than what others think or do. By focusing on what we can control, we can keep calm like a Stoic. Lesson 2. Use reason over emotion. Another key lesson from Stoicism is to use reason over emotion and not let your feelings cloud your judgment. This is what the Stoics called rationality, the ability to think clearly, logically, and objectively without being influenced by emotions, biases, or impulses. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "The mind that is anxious about future events is miserable." What does this mean? It means that we should not let our emotions, such as fear, anger, or sadness, take over our mind and affect our decisions. Instead, we should use reason to examine our thoughts and feelings and challenge any irrational or distorted beliefs that cause us to suffer. We should also avoid making hasty or impulsive decisions based on emotions, and instead seek evidence and logic before forming opinions or judgments. For example, we should not panic or despair when we face a problem, but rather analyze the situation and look for solutions. We should not react with anger or resentment when someone insults us, but rather ignore them or respond with kindness. We should not believe everything we hear or see, but rather verify the facts and sources. How can we apply this lesson to our lives? We can practice rationality by being more mindful of our thoughts and emotions and questioning their validity and usefulness. We can also use techniques such as journaling, meditation, or cognitive behavioral therapy to help us cope with negative emotions and reframe our thinking. We can also seek feedback and advice from others who can offer us a different perspective and help us correct our errors. What are the benefits of this lesson? By using reason over emotion, we can avoid emotional distress, cognitive errors, and irrational behavior, and increase our clarity, accuracy, and consistency. We can also become more calm, confident, and wise as we learn to think for ourselves and act in accordance with our values. By using reason over emotion, we can keep calm like a Stoic. Lesson 3. Live in the present moment. A third lesson from Stoicism is to live in the present moment and not let your mind wander to the past or the future. This is what the Stoics called mindfulness, the practice of paying attention to the present moment with awareness and acceptance, without judgment or distraction. The Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius said, "Do not let the future trouble you. You will come to it if you have to, with the same reason that you apply now to the present." What does this mean? It means that we should not waste our time and energy on regretting the past or worrying about the future, which are both beyond our control. Instead, we should focus on the present moment, which is the only thing that we have and that matters. We should also accept the present moment as it is, without wishing it to be different or resisting it. We should also appreciate the present moment without taking it for granted or missing its beauty. How can we apply this lesson to our lives? We can practice mindfulness by using various techniques, such as breathing, meditation, or journaling, to bring our attention to the here and now. We can also avoid dwelling on the past or worrying about the future by reminding ourselves that they are not real and that the present moment is the only reality. We can also appreciate what we have and what we can do in the present moment by expressing gratitude, kindness, and generosity. What are the benefits of this lesson? By living in the present moment, we can reduce our stress, anxiety, and depression, and increase our happiness, gratitude, and well-being. We can also become more calm, attentive, and mindful as we learn to enjoy the simple pleasures of life and the beauty of nature. We can also live more in harmony with ourselves and others as we learn to accept and appreciate what is. By living in the present moment, we can keep calm like a Stoic. Lesson 4. Practice gratitude. A fourth lesson from Stoicism is to practice gratitude and not let your desires or expectations spoil your happiness. This is what the Stoics called gratitude, the feeling of appreciation and thankfulness for what you have and what you experience, regardless of the circumstances. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient, for he that is so wants nothing." What does this mean? It means that we should not be constantly chasing after more things, more money, more fame, or more pleasure, which are never enough and always leave us wanting more. Instead, we should be content with what we have and appreciate the simple and essential things in life, such as health, family, friends, nature, and wisdom. We should also be grateful for the opportunities and challenges that we face, which help us grow and learn. How can we apply this lesson to our lives? We can practice gratitude by using various exercises, such as writing a gratitude list, sending a thank you note, or expressing gratitude verbally to acknowledge and appreciate the good things in our life. We can also avoid taking things for granted or complaining about what we lack by reminding ourselves of how fortunate we are and how much we have. We can also recognize the value and meaning of what we have and what we experience by reflecting on how they contribute to our happiness and well-being. What are the benefits of this lesson? By practicing gratitude, we can reduce our negative emotions, such as envy, resentment, or dissatisfaction, and increase our positive emotions, such as joy, love, and satisfaction. We can also become more calm, humble, and generous as we learn to share our blessings and help others. We can also live more in harmony with ourselves and the universe, as we learn to appreciate the beauty and order of nature and the divine. By practicing gratitude, we can keep calm like a Stoic. Lesson 5. Seek wisdom from others. A fifth lesson from Stoicism is to seek wisdom from others and not be arrogant or ignorant about your own knowledge. This is what the Stoics called learning, the process of acquiring new knowledge, skills, or perspectives from various sources, such as books, mentors, or experiences. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "Don't just say you have read books. Show that through them you have learned to think better, to be a more discriminating and reflective person." Books are the training weights of the mind. They are very helpful, but it would be a bad mistake to suppose that one has made progress simply by having internalized their contents. What does this mean? It means that we should not be satisfied with what we already know or think that we know everything. Instead, we should be humble and curious and always seek to learn more and better. We should also be open and receptive to the wisdom of others, especially those who have more experience or expertise than us. We should also be willing to learn from our own mistakes and successes and reflect on what we can improve or change. How can we apply this lesson to our lives? We can practice learning by using various opportunities, such as reading books, listening to podcasts, or attending courses, to expand our knowledge and understanding of various topics. We can also seek advice and feedback from others, such as mentors, coaches, or friends, who can offer us valuable insights and guidance. We can also learn from our own mistakes and successes by analyzing what went wrong or right, and what we can do differently or better next time. What are the benefits of this lesson? By seeking wisdom from others, we can increase our intelligence, creativity, and curiosity, and improve our performance and results. We can also become more calm, confident, and wise, as we learn to think critically and rationally, and act in accordance with our values. We can also live more in harmony with ourselves and others, as we learn to respect and appreciate different perspectives and experiences. By seeking wisdom from others, we can keep calm like a Stoic. We hope you are enjoying this video and finding these lessons useful. If you are, please let us know in the comments below and tell us which lesson resonated with you the most. And if you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to share them as well. We would love to hear from you. Now let's continue to keep calm like a Stoic. Lesson 6. Be humble and modest. A sixth lesson from Stoicism is to be humble and modest, and not let your ego or pride get in the way of your happiness. This is what the Stoics called humility, the quality of being humble, modest and respectful without being arrogant, boastful or pretentious. The Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius said, "How ridiculous and how strange to be surprised at anything which happens in life." What does this mean? It means that we should not think too highly or too lowly of ourselves or compare ourselves to others. Instead, we should be realistic and honest about our own limitations, weaknesses and faults, and admit when we are wrong or ignorant. We should also avoid being overconfident, prideful or vain, and do not seek praise or recognition from others. We should also respect others, regardless of their status, position or opinion, and do not judge or criticize them. How can we apply this lesson to our lives? We can practice humility by being more self-aware and self-critical, and acknowledging our mistakes and areas of improvement. We can also use feedback and criticism from others as opportunities to learn and grow, rather than as threats or insults. We can also appreciate and compliment others for their strengths and achievements, rather than being envious or resentful. We can also be more open-minded and tolerant of different views and beliefs, rather than being dogmatic or dismissive. What are the benefits of this lesson? By being humble and modest, we can reduce our conflict, resentment and hostility, and increase our cooperation, harmony and kindness. We can also become more calm, content and happy as we learn to accept ourselves and others as they are, and not as we wish them to be. We can also live more in harmony with ourselves and the universe as we learn to recognize and appreciate the wonder and mystery of life. By being humble and modest, we can keep calm like a Stoic. Lesson 7. Be generous and helpful. A seventh lesson from Stoicism is to be generous and helpful, and not let your greed or selfishness get in the way of your virtue. This is what the Stoics call generosity, the quality of being generous, kind and helpful without being selfish, greedy or stingy. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "We should give as we would receive, cheerfully, quickly and without hesitation, for there is no grace in a benefit that sticks to the fingers." What does this mean? It means that we should not be attached to our possessions, money or status, or hoard them for ourselves. Instead, we should be willing to share them with others, especially those who are in need or less fortunate than us. We should also not expect anything in return, or use our generosity as a way to manipulate or exploit others. We should also be ready to help others without being intrusive, imposing or demanding, and respect their dignity and autonomy. How can we apply this lesson to our lives? We can practice generosity by using various ways, such as donating to a charity, volunteering for a cause, or offering a service to share our time, money, or resources with others. We can also avoid being selfish, greedy, or stingy by reminding ourselves that everything we have is a gift from nature or the divine, and that we are only temporary stewards of them. We can also help others without being intrusive, imposing, or manipulative by asking them what they need, how they feel, and what they want, and respecting their choices and preferences. What are the benefits of this lesson? By being generous and helpful, we can reduce our guilt, regret, and isolation, and increase our happiness, fulfillment, and connection. We can also become more calm, compassionate, and generous as we learn to give without expecting, and help without interfering. We can also live more in harmony with ourselves and others, as we learn to value and appreciate the common good and the human bond. By being generous and helpful, we can keep calm like a Stoic. Lesson 8. Be resilient and adaptable. An eighth lesson from Stoicism is to be resilient and adaptable, and not let your circumstances or emotions get the best of you. This is what the Stoics called resilience, the ability to cope with and overcome challenges, difficulties, or setbacks without giving up or breaking down. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." What does this mean? It means that we should not be overwhelmed or defeated by the problems or obstacles that we encounter, but rather face them with courage and confidence. We should also not be passive, pessimistic, or victimized, and do not blame others or ourselves for our misfortunes. Instead, we should take responsibility for our actions and reactions and look for solutions and opportunities. We should also adapt to changing circumstances without being rigid, resistant, or stubborn, and do not resist or deny reality. We should accept what we cannot change and change what we can. How can we apply this lesson to our lives? We can practice resilience by using various strategies, such as positive affirmations, coping skills, or support networks, to help us deal with stress, anxiety, or depression. We can also avoid being passive, pessimistic, or victimized by reminding ourselves of our strengths, values, and goals, and taking action to improve our situation. We can also adapt to changing circumstances without being rigid, resistant, or stubborn, by being flexible, creative, and open-minded, and embracing change as a chance to grow and learn. What are the benefits of this lesson? By being resilient and adaptable, we can reduce our stress, anxiety, and depression, and increase our strength, courage, and growth. We can also become more calm, confident, and wise as we learn to cope with and overcome challenges and make the best of any situation. We can also live more in harmony with ourselves and the universe as we learn to accept and adapt to reality and not fight against it. By being resilient and adaptable, we can keep calm like a Stoic. Lesson 9. Be virtuous and ethical. A ninth lesson from Stoicism is to be virtuous and ethical and not let your vices or temptations get the best of you. This is what the Stoics called virtue, the quality of being virtuous, ethical, and moral, without being corrupt, immoral, or unethical. The Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." What does this mean? It means that we should not be swayed by our passions or fears or by the opinions of others. Instead, we should act in accordance with our values, principles, and morals, which are based on reason, wisdom, and justice. We should also avoid being corrupt, immoral, or unethical, and do not harm or deceive others, either by our words or deeds. We should follow our conscience without being influenced by external factors, such as peer pressure or personal gain. How can we apply this lesson to our lives? We can practice virtue by using various methods, such as self-examination, meditation, or role models. We can also avoid being unvirtuous by reminding ourselves of the consequences and costs of our actions, both for ourselves and others. We can also follow our conscience by being honest and independent, and doing what we think is right, even if it is unpopular or difficult. What are the benefits of this lesson? By being virtuous and ethical, we can reduce our guilt and increase our integrity. We can become more calm and fulfilled as we learn to live in harmony with our true nature and purpose. Live more in harmony with others and the universe as we learn to respect and uphold the dignity and rights of all beings. By being virtuous and ethical, we can keep calm like a Stoic. Lesson 10. Be happy and content. The final lesson from Stoicism is to be happy and content, and not let your circumstances or desires get the best of you. This is what the Stoics called happiness, the state of being happy, content, and satisfied without being unhappy, discontent, or dissatisfied. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "The happy life is to have a mind that is free, lofty, fearless, and steadfast, a mind that is placed beyond the reach of fear, beyond the reach of desire, that counts virtue the only good, baseness the only evil, and all else but a worthless mass of things, which come and go without increasing or diminishing the highest good, and neither subtract any part from the happy life, nor add any part to it." What does this mean? It means that we should not be affected by the external things that we cannot control, or by the internal things that we can control, but are not essential for our happiness. Instead, we should be content with what we have, and appreciate the simple and natural things in life, such as health, wisdom, and virtue. We should also avoid being dependent on external factors, such as possessions, status, or pleasure, for our happiness, and realize that they are not the source of our happiness, but only the means to it. We should cultivate an inner state of peace, joy, and fulfillment that comes from living according to our nature and purpose. How can we apply this lesson to our lives? We can practice happiness by using various techniques, such as meditation, gratitude, or Stoic exercises, to help us detach from the external things that we cannot control, and focus on the internal things that we can control and that matter most. We can also avoid being dependent on external factors, such as possessions, status, or pleasure for our happiness, and instead seek happiness within ourselves by living in harmony with our values and goals. We can also cultivate an inner state of peace, joy, and fulfillment by being mindful, positive, and compassionate, and doing what we love and what makes us happy. What are the benefits of this lesson? By being happy and content, we can reduce our unhappiness, discontent, and dissatisfaction, and increase our happiness, contentment, and satisfaction. We can also become more calm, serene, and cheerful as we learn to enjoy and appreciate our life as it is, and not as we wish it to be. We can also live more in harmony with ourselves and the universe as we learn to find and follow our true happiness and purpose. By being happy and content, we can keep calm like a Stoic. With all that said, please continue watching the recommended videos now on your screen, or check out one of the videos on our homepage. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment below. I would love to hear from you and know what you think. Remember, stay strong, stay Stoic. Live well, live wisely.